The Legend of Sunset Shimmer, Ocarina of Time. By Ganondorf 8. November 13, 2014. Chapter 2, To Meet the Princess.
We have to hurry, Spike, before the drawbridge closes, and we both end up having to spend the night outside in the field,
I said as I ran as fast as I could towards the entry gate of Hyrule Castle Town. It felt as though it was continuing to get further away the more I wanted to reach it, but in fact I was about a mile away with the sun getting closer and closer to setting in the evening sky.
If we do end up being stuck outside, then what's the problem?
Asked Spike.
Remember what Flash Sentry, or whatever his actual name was, said about what happens in the field at night?
I asked.
Oh yeah,
replied Spike.
So if we are stuck outside and have to wait until morning for the drawbridge to come down, then we'll have our hands full dealing with monsters all night. While I am a bit more confident in using my magic, I wouldn't say that I'm that confident, so if we can get inside the town before the drawbridge closes, then we don't have to worry about monsters chasing after us,
I said.
Then let's stop talking and get ourselves in there already,
shouted Spike. Even in this world, Spike still has his sarcastic wit despite him being a fairy, but it made me start to think that the people I've met so far who resemble my friends and foes from Canterlot High do have some aspects of their personalities. They of course don't even realize it because of having the personalities of characters that existed in this video game world. One thing was for certain. I was going to have to play this game for myself when I return home. Spike and I managed to reach the town before the drawbridge closed, and as we made our way in, the drawbridge rose and closed with a loud thud. For the time being, we were both safe from any sort of problem, but of course I knew deep down that trouble always seemed to find me.
So this is Hyrule Castle Town?
I asked Spike.
You should know that this is the largest city in all of Hyrule. Many people from all walks of life come here in order to do their business, or to see the royal family. I know that this must a little intimidating seeing as you're used to the small village lifestyle of the Kokiri Forest, but as long as you keep your wits about you, you'll be able to walk around just fine,
replied Spike.
You do know that I know what it's like to live in a city, right?
I asked.
From that other world of yours?
Asked Spike.
That shouldn't be of any concern of yours as you'd rather not talk about it, and you wanted me to forget about the idea altogether. Anyway, you don't need to worry about how I can handle myself in a city, so let's see what kinds of things happen around here,
I replied. Spike did have a good reason to be worried, for he knew more about this place than I did. Upon arriving in the market, I was aghast with the fact that there were so many people moving about doing all kinds of things. I know I said that I was used to the city life, but not this kind of city life.
You have a lot of nerve accusing me like that, and I have a good mind to put you in your place. But you stole some fruit from my stall. You have no proof that I even did such a thing. You Hylians are always so full of yourselves, thinking that you're better than the rest of the tribes in Hyrule, all because your royal family rules over us all. I'm surprised that your king managed to unite us all under his banner without screwing it up. How dare you speak of the king in such a manner? I can say anything I want about your king because I'm under the protection of the great Ganondorf. That man shouldn't even be allowed to see the king because you Gerudo refused our previous alliance, all because you wanted to be left alone. The king would be a fool to accept any kind of alliance with a nomadic mongrel. That's it. Insulting the great Ganondorf insults us Gerudo.
Even though I knew that an argument was taking place, I couldn't bring myself to getting involved as that would have done me no good. Just when I thought that the problem was about to resort in violence.
Enough. Stand down at once.
That commanding voice was one that I recognized straight away as belonging to Rainbow Dash, so I began to frantically shake my head back and forth in the hopes of finding her among the crowd.
You're acting out of line and you should know better than that, so stand down. But exalted Neighboru. If this mission of good will falls apart because of what has happened here, your punishment at the hands of our king shall be most severe. Now, stand down at once,
said Rainbow Dash in a booming voice that caused the other person to silently stand to one side and bowing her head in shame. Rainbow Dash then turned to face the merchant who had been victimized.
My apologies if my fellow tribeswoman caused you any kind of emotional state, and for that I take full responsibility for this situation. Please allow me to pay for the product that has been stolen from you, and I will see to it that this one is punished justly. I suppose that I can accept your apology and your payment. This one will be thinking about what she has done once the great Ganondorf has dealt with her,
said Rainbow Dash as she walked away, leaving the merchant to his business before starting to talk quietly to herself.
I don't know why I was needed to come here and act as his vassal, for Ganondorf knows that he had no need for me or the others when he decided to come here seeking an alliance with the Hylian king. Maybe he wanted me here so that he could keep an eye on me? Does this mean that he is aware of my ulterior motives in the desert? I'd best not think about that for a while, and just focus on getting through this and back to the fortress.
That was when I noticed Rainbow Dash, and was I shocked at the outfit that she was wearing. If I could describe it in a single word, then skimpy would definitely come to mind. All she was wearing was a bra, and a pair of baggy pants along with some bracelets on her arms. Despite this, I had to talk to her straight away, so I approached her with a smile on my face, but her reaction wasn't what I was expecting.
Hey! Who are you supposed to be, and why are you dressed in that ridiculous outfit? Rainbow Dash. It's me, Sunset Shimmer,
I said excitedly.
I have no idea what you're talking about, kid,
said Rainbow Dash.
You don't recognize me, do you? Just like Spike, Diamond Tiara, Fluttershy, and Flash Sentry before you, as none of them knew who I really was, and believed me to be someone else,
I said.
If it's any consolation, kid, I don't recognize any of those names you sputtered out either, so don't feel bad about me not knowing who you are. Then again, I am curious to know why you of all people here decided to come straight up and talk to me as though they knew me by heart,
said Rainbow Dash. Just as I was about to explain to her my reasons for talking to her, another girl appeared on the scene who was dressed similar to Rainbow Dash. Perhaps her most distinguishing feature was that one eye was looking up, and the other one was looking down. Rainbow Dash must have known who this girl was as she walked to her before she could reach her.
Derpy? What are you doing here? I thought that you were with the others at the castle attending the great Ganondorf? Well, there's been an issue at the castle involving the rest of the entourage, ma'am,
replied Derpy.
What have they done?
Asked Rainbow Dash.
Now, what was it that they were doing? Let me think about it for just a minute. Oh yeah. They were causing a ruckus inside of the castle, and the guards ordered them to leave, but they refused and ended up being forced out. Now they are pounding at the gates of the castle asking to be let back in, and they are acting really crazy,
replied Derpy.
Sigh. It just never fails, does it? I knew this was going to happen because he wanted to bring a dozen of us along for this act of goodwill. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Derpy, and rest assured that I will take care of it before it gets any worse," said Rainbow Dash, but before she could do anything else, a loud crash sounded off and caused people to notice what was going on. "Oh, for Pete's sake, Derpy! Looks like I'm going to have to bail you out of another mess you've gotten yourself into."
Rainbow Dash walked over to where a girl wearing similar attire to her own was standing, and with a sigh she began to hand over what appeared to be gems to the woman running the stall.
"I just don't know what went wrong,"
said Derpy.
"Your usual response to these things,"
sighed Rainbow Dash as she headed off towards the castle with her two companions walking along behind her. I had no idea as to what had just happened, but I wasn't able to explain things to her, which made me feel disappointed. At the same time, however, I felt relieved knowing that I didn't have to explain anything and make a fool out of myself. Since the castle was where this princess I have to see was located, it made sense that I should follow Rainbow Dash. Just as I was about to go and follow her, a small child began to walk towards me as though she were curious about what I was wearing. This girl was Apple Bloom, who was the younger sister of Applejack, but what was she doing here without her sister or her friends?
"Say, y'all look different from the rest of the folk around here. Judging from your choice of clothes and that fairy flying around you, I'd say you were from the forest. My name is Malin, and I'm the granddaughter of Talon, the owner of Lon Lon Ranch. She came here to deliver some milk to the castle, but she hasn't come back yet, and I'm really starting to get worried. I know Granny has a habit of taking her time with deliveries, but this is the longest she has taken to complete a delivery,"
said Apple Bloom.
"So then why did you come?"
I asked.
"It's not every day that I get to see Hyrule Castle Town, so I insisted on Granny taking me with her, and leaving Ingo to run things while we were gone."
He must be really upset over the fact that we've been gone this long, but he'll have to wait until morning because of the drawbridge being closed until sunup.
"Granny means well, but sometimes she has a tendency to just fall asleep, and not move for hours at a time. Anyway, since you were heading off to the castle in order to follow those women, would it be okay if I came along with you so that I can find Granny?"
asked Apple Bloom.
"I could use the additional company, Apple Bloom,"
I replied.
"Hey, Apple Bloom? That sure is a funny name you just said there, and it's actually really cute because I do love apples. Say, do you mind if I use that as a sort of nickname? I think that it suits me really well,"
said Apple Bloom. For once, I didn't complain about the fact that another of my friends didn't recognize me or their actual name from our world, because there was something about Apple Bloom that made me not want to think about it. I would eventually think about it again without a doubt, because I couldn't keep it out of my mind, but for the time being it was nice not having to worry about it. As we walked towards the castle by leaving the town through the northern gate, Apple Bloom brought up another question.
"By the way, you never told me what your name was,"
said Apple Bloom. I told her my name, expecting the usual reaction of not knowing what it even means, but I was surprised by what Apple Bloom said to me next.
"Sunset Shimmer, you say? That's a pretty nice name, as it complements your hair color really well. It reminds me of the sun as it settles down for the night, and knowing that you've done all you can to enjoy the experience the day gave you. I'm willing to believe that other people haven't been exactly as positive about your name as I have, hey?"
Little did she know how right she really was, and I made sure not to let her see my tears of happiness. It was at that moment the sound of metal clashing against metal could be heard, and up ahead was a commotion which must be the one that Rainbow Dash had gone to take care of. Even though we were both at a fair distance, Apple Bloom and I could hear some of the words that were being said, but much was too hard to understand.
Apple Bloom, I mean, Malin,
I began after quickly correcting myself.
I think it's for the best that you head back into town as this could get really dangerous. I'll continue on with my purpose for being here in addition to finding your grandmother, as I feel that both tasks will lead me to the same result. If you think that's for the best, then I'll head back into town and wait for Granny to come back. Oh. You should take this egg with you on your journey. I know that it sounds weird and all, but if you incubate it long enough, it will hatch into a cuckoo which could be of help to you. Well, maybe not as helpful as say a weapon, but it's the best that I have to offer,
said Apple Bloom.
Like that one chicken I saw at the ranch?
I asked.
Oh. So you paid a visit to Lon Lon Ranch, and neither me nor Granny were there to show you around. I doubt that Ingo would have taken the time to give you a tour, seeing as he has so many chores to do in a given day. I tell you what, Sunset Shimmer. The next time you decide to come to Lon Lon Ranch, I'll give you the grand tour, and even introduce you to a friend of mine,
replied Apple Bloom as she walked back towards town.
You have managed to make quite an impact on that young girl. Why? Flash Sentry!
I exclaimed upon hearing his voice coming from on top of a nearby tree.
How long have you been up there for? I've been here watching you long enough in order to see if you did have what it took to save this world from the evil that threatens it. I am impressed with your progress, but there is more for you to accomplish before you can become the hero of legend. I knew that you would arrive at the castle town before the drawbridge closed, as you had an incentive to make it here,
replied Flash Sentry.
Then what you said about monsters coming out at night was a lie?
I asked.
Monsters do come out at night across Hyrule Field, so what I have told you is the truth.
No doubt that you have heard all of the commotion that has been coming from the gates of the castle just further along?
It seems that one side is blaming the other for causing problems, and that it appears to be reaching a boiling point. Someone from the castle is about to enter this conflict and will attempt to resolve the issue. This one has served the royal family for many years. This problem does, however, make it hard for you to get inside in order to see the princess. I have heard stories that there exists a small opening on the right side of the castle in which water from the castle streams into the moat, but whether this is true or not remains to be seen,
replied Flash Sentry.
If I can find this opening, then I can get inside rather than trying to get through the front door,
I said.
Again, you must be cautious of the guards as they will throw you back outside if you were to get caught,
said Flash Sentry.
What can you tell me about the one from the castle?
I asked.
They say that she is the last surviving member of an ancient group that swore their undying loyalty to the royal family, and that throughout the generations they have served as attendants to the family.
Most Hylians never knew they existed, for this group operated in the shadows in order to maximize their full potential.
That is why the name of this shadow group is known as the Sheikah. I must take my leave of you now, Sunset Shimmer, but we shall meet again,
replied Flash Sentry as he once again urged his giant owl to take to the sky and fly off in a random direction. What he had to say was quite informative, but at the same time it made me wonder just how much he really knew about this world. Spike urged me to get closer to what was going on at the castle gates, and that was when I saw Applejack approaching in the same outfit that she was wearing in my dream. If what Flash Sentry said was correct, Applejack must be the Sheikah who lives in the castle. Her calm approach to the gates got the troublemakers riled up, except for Rainbow Dash, who was also calm.
You must be the one who is in charge of this group?
Asked Applejack.
Our king who is speaking with your king leads us, but I serve as his second in command,
replied Rainbow Dash.
So that does make you the one in charge, yes?
asked Applejack.
I suppose that it does. Your clothing doesn't surprise me at all, as I know who you are. You are the only surviving member of those shadow warriors that the royal family has relied on for years to protect them,
replied Rainbow Dash.
That is correct. It has come to my attention that one of your warriors caused an incident in the market in addition to an incident in the castle caused by several more,
said Applejack.
And I'm here to apologize on behalf of the Gerudo,
said Rainbow Dash.
While that may be true, the fact of the matter is that your warriors have caused problems which in turn reflect upon how well your king is to be received here. Already the relationship between the Hylians and the Gerudo is poor, which is why our respective kings are trying to establish peace between our two tribes. However, the actions of your warriors could in fact make things worse,
said Applejack.
They were both just isolated incidents, and the ones involved will be punished when we return to our fortress,
said Rainbow Dash.
I fear that may not be enough,
said Applejack.
You think that these small incidents could lead into something much worse in the future? Like I said to you already, I promise you that those who have caused this kingdom trouble will be punished upon our return to the fortress. If anything, they probably wish that they were being punished by me, because I don't have as much authority to exert the kinds of punishment the great Ganondorf is known for giving out,
said Rainbow Dash. That name Rainbow Dash said just now. That was the name of the man who caused all of this to happen to me and my friends in the first place. Could he be in the castle as well? But why was Rainbow Dash a member of the same tribe?
I've come to a decision, and that is to take my warriors back with me to the fortress to await the return of our king. Would that be a wise decision to leave your king here on his own?
asked Applejack.
The great Ganondorf is more than capable of taking care of himself, and I am sure he will understand my decision as being for the good of our tribe,
replied Rainbow Dash.
It sounds like you are not being completely loyal to your king,
suggested Applejack.
My loyalty to the great Ganondorf is absolute. However, the well-being of my people and preventing any further strife is also important, and that is why we shall withdraw back to our fortress. The great Ganondorf may choose to punish me for this decision, but so long as my people are safe, then it doesn't matter. Derpy!
shouted Rainbow Dash.
You called exalted Neighboru, I mean, ma'am,
responded Derpy as she accidentally dropped her sword on the ground by trying to draw it for no reason.
I told you that you don't need to draw your sword every time that I call you,
sighed Rainbow Dash.
Sorry ma'am, said Derpy. We're leaving to return to the fortress, so be sure to cover our tracks behind us as we depart,
commanded Rainbow Dash.
As you command ma'am, I mean, exalted Neighboru, no I really mean, ma'am,
said Derpy.
Just get on with it, okay Derpy? With that I bid you good day Sheikah,
said Rainbow Dash as she started to walk away. This was the perfect opportunity for me to talk to her, but something inside of me was preventing me from doing so. Maybe my heart was holding me back because I felt bad for Rainbow Dash being forced to obey the whims of someone else. Spike could sense that I was feeling this way, and didn't say anything about me trying to talk to her. I decided to look towards Applejack, and if I didn't know better, I could swear that she looked at me and smiled. That was when another guard came out, but he was wearing different armor from the rest of the guards I saw.
Madam Impa, is everything okay? I was wondering where you were shining armor,
replied Applejack.
When word reached me that there was a commotion going on at the gates, I had to make sure that the king and the princess were safe. I apologize that I didn't get out here sooner because you were forced to handle a situation that was clearly my responsibility,"
said Shining Armor.
"You are the captain of the royal guards, and your duty is to protect the royal family from those who would seek harm to them. I'd say that you have fulfilled your duties admirably, so there is no need for you to apologize. The problem has been resolved and all is well,"
said Applejack.
"Do you believe that the Gerudo King can be trusted?"
asked Shining Armor.
"Ours is not the place to question such things, Shining Armor, for we are merely servants to the king. It will be up to him to decide to believe the words of the Desert King and suggest a possible alliance between us and the Gerudo. I must return now to the princess's side, and you must resume your watch of the castle for further problems,"
replied Applejack.
"Understood, Madam Impa,"
said Shining Armor as he gave her a salute and proceeded to walk towards the gate. I guess that he wanted to see what the problem was for himself, which made Applejack smile and shake her head before she went back inside. This meant that the gates weren't going to be an option for me. I then noticed some vines that were similar in appearance to what I encountered inside of the Great Deku tree, so I decided to climb up, making sure to keep the egg Apple Bloom gave to me safe. Upon reaching the top of the vines and jumping down the other side and avoiding the main set of guards at the gate, I ran as fast as could, avoiding other guards. I soon discovered the castle's moat, which Flash Sentry mentioned, so that meant that I had to get myself wet in order to move about without being seen, as there were more guards at the front door.
"At least none of the guards have spotted us, otherwise we would have been thrown back outside of the gates. I know that this isn't pleasant for you, Sunset Shimmer, but you need to." "Do you hear that?"
asked Spike.
"Hear what?"
I asked.
"The sound of someone snoring,"
replied Spike.
"Now that you mention it, someone is snoring,"
I said.
"Whoever it is must either be really lazy, or decided to take a nap in a really awkward location,"
said Spike. Upon following the sound of the snoring, we came upon an elderly woman whom I recognized as that of Granny Smith, the lunch lady of CHS.
"This must be Malon's grandmother, who went to deliver some milk to the castle, Sunset Shimmer, and she was right about her granny falling asleep. I don't think your magic is going to work when it comes to waking her up, so unless you have something else that can do the trick, we'll be stuck here until morning." "I do have this egg,"
I announced.
"While I have no doubt that a cuckoo will hatch from that egg according to Malon, but we would have to wait for a long time for it to hatch. Unless you plan on using your magic in order to hatch the egg quickly,"
suggested Spike.
"That was what I was thinking," I said. "You may want to rethink your way of thinking here.
While I have no doubt that your magic is powerful, attempting to hatch a cuckoo using a contrived method instead of a natural process could cause you to accidentally kill the cuckoo," said Spike.
"I know the risk involved, Spike, but we need to get into the castle as soon as possible. Besides, my magic isn't just limited to fire, you know, just because I used it that way in the Great Deku Tree. My magic can be anything my heart desires, and while it sounds weird, it makes sense to me. Fire just so happens to be the main source behind my magic in this world because of my name,"
I said as I sat down and began to concentrate, holding the egg in my hands. By focusing my magic slowly and carefully, I expressed in my heart that I wanted to see this cuckoo hatch into the world in order to help me on my journey. I also wanted it to experience the world with its own eyes.
"Cuckoo? What incarnation?"
exclaimed Granny Smith upon being woken up by the sound of the cuckoo as it came out of its egg.
Can't an elderly woman get some shut-eye around here? Yawn. Now who are you supposed to be? Are you the owner of Lon Lon Ranch?
I asked.
Yep, I'm Talon, owner of happiest place in all of Hyrule where people come to have fun. Now then, I take it that you came all this way here in order to get the grand tour of my ranch, did ya? No, that can't be right, otherwise you'd have come there instead of here. Yawn. The last thing I remember was coming here to the castle in order to deliver some milk, and when I was finished, I decided to take a short rest, which must have made me eventually fall asleep,
replied Granny Smith.
I have a message for you,
I began.
Why didn't you say that in the first year, whippersnapper? What kind of message is it?
Asked Granny Smith.
It comes from your granddaughter, who says that she has been waiting for you to return from the castle for some time now,
I replied.
Malin was waiting for me all that time? I'm going to get an earful from her now at this rate. Thank you for giving me that there message, but I need to get to her, and back to the ranch as soon as possible. Shoot, I've really gone and messed things up what with my sleeping here,
said Granny Smith.
Actually, you'll have to stay the night here as the drawbridge has closed,
I said.
It has? Things have just gotten worse for me, so I'm sorry if I can't stick around and chat with you, but I need to get myself back into the market before Malin really chews me out,
said Granny Smith. She then started to walk off at a rather slow pace, which was understandable that she was a senior after all, but when she had gotten a good distance away from me several minutes later, she began to run at a brisk pace, which struck me as odd. This world, I think, is starting to get a little weird, and that it was only going to get weirder as time went on. Granny Smith had left behind 2 large crates which I assumed contained milk, and across from where I was standing was a small hole where water was flowing from into the moat. This must be the other entrance to the castle Flash Sentry mentioned, but how was I supposed to get over there and go in? After pacing about and thinking it over for a while, I came to the conclusion that I could use those crates as a sort of stepping stone, and then jump across a much smaller gap in order to reach the hole. I grabbed the closest crate that was near me, and began to pull it as hard as I could. It was a lot heavier than I thought it was.
Come on, Sunset Shimmer! Put your back into it!
Shouted Spike.
Instead of floating there and telling me what to do, why not give me a hand?
I asked.
I'd gladly do that if I wasn't a fairy, and therefore much too small to be able to contribute,
replied Spike.
Like I said before, smugness does not become you,
I moaned upon realizing that I walked right into that bit of sarcasm. While it was nice to see that Spike's mannerisms from Equestria shining forth, I wished that it wouldn't come at the cost of my own patience with him. Now I knew how he felt when he was feeling impatient with me when we first met each other in this world. Many minutes of back-breaking labor later, I managed to push both crates off of the side where one stood atop the other, and made for a good stepping stone. After pacing myself for the jump, I leapt over the gap and landed on the other side, and almost fell into the moat, which got me a small chuckle from Spike. Once I gathered my bearings, I crawled into the hole, and soon found myself standing in a fountain, which was what was connecting with the hole to the outside.
So this is in the interior of Hyrule Castle? This is my first time being inside of a castle since I left Equestria, and I feel pretty overwhelmed at what I'm looking at.
Overwhelmed was an understatement, for the castle's interior was white all over, which made it feel really eerie, and I'll admit that I was uncomfortable being here. Seeing as there was grass instead of a marble floor, this must be some kind of courtyard which will make avoiding the majority of the guards a benefit. Large bushes and statues were off in the distance, and I could use those to sneak around and hide if need be in order to avoid getting thrown back outside.
I take it that you're aware of the bushes and statues that line the courtyard, right? Good, then I don't feel the need to explain about how you can use them to your advantage. I can hear the footsteps of guards walking on the grass, so you will need to watch their movements carefully and avoid them at all costs,"
suggested Spike. I nodded my approval and began to make my way into the courtyard. The guards were patrolling in specific formations, which made it easy for me to figure out when to walk by in order to make it to the next area. Of course, they ended up changing their tactics further along, and at one point I had to jump into a bush and hide for a couple of minutes, all because the guards decided to stop and talk. What they had to say was pretty uninteresting aside from one thing, and was whether it was a good idea for the king to trust Ganondorf. After what seemed like forever avoiding guards by hiding and sneaking around, Spike and I finally made it, only to end up in another courtyard, which was a large circular area with no other way to move forward aside from going back the way we came. The middle of the courtyard featured a large circle of flowers which looked like they had cared for with love and tenderness. Each side of the courtyard featured windows, and on the inside of them, hanging on the walls, were painting of characters who felt like I knew them from somewhere, but couldn't quite put my finger on it.
"You can come out now, Spike, as we made it," I said. "Okay, but I was hoping to have stayed under your hat a while longer as it's just so warm. This courtyard is certainly much spacious than what we had to go through just to get here. Apart from the flower garden, the windows, the small moat, and that girl staring at the window at the far side of the area, this place is quite peaceful," said Spike. "What girl?"
I asked.
"The one way over there,"
replied Spike.
"I honestly didn't notice her standing there, but she must be the princess that we came here to see,"
I said. As I made my way over to the princess, I recalled the dream I had before waking up in this world. What Twilight was wearing in that dream was what the princess was wearing. Could it be that Twilight, the one who was able to guide me along the path of friendship, is the princess? As I stood behind her, the princess heard my footsteps and turned around to face me.
"Oh! You? How did you get here? How did you get past the guards?" "Twilight! It is you!"
I exclaimed. Indeed, I was standing face to face with Twilight Sparkle, which meant that what I saw in my dream regarding both her and Applejack was true.
"I can't believe that you of all ponies were dragged into this world along with the rest of us, but I guess that our connection was what caused you to get caught up in all this." "Did you just call me a pony?"
asked Twilight.
"I did, and I am sorry,"
I replied upon realizing that she didn't know what I was talking about.
"Oh! What is that flying about behind you? Is that a fairy? Then you must be from the forest, so does that mean that you have the spiritual stone of the forest in your possession? Do you have it?"
asked Twilight. I nodded my head in approval rather than say anything due to my blunder just now.
"Yes, I had a feeling that you were in possession of it. As of late, I've had dreams where the land of Hyrule is covered in a cloud of darkness. Suddenly, a green light shines forth from the forest, and from the light comes a young girl in green holding the spiritual stone and being accompanied by a fairy. Yes, I knew that you were the one when you confirmed to me that you had the stone. Oh! I've gotten so caught up that I didn't even properly introduce myself to you. I am Zelda, Princess of Hyrule, and what is your name?" "My name is Sunset Shimmer," I answered. "That is an unusual name to be sure, but it's one that sounds very familiar to me, as though I know of it from somewhere. In fact, your name reminds me of another world somewhere. We were friends with other people who shared a magical connection that enabled us to defeat a powerful evil that threatened it. It sounds strange, I know, to be talking of a world different from our own, but your name made me think about it for just a brief moment,"
said Twilight. Hearing her say that made me shocked, because she was the only one in this world who showed a small understanding of the human world we all really come from. How was it that Twilight was able to recall it and no one else could?
"Tell me, Sunset Shimmer, when you received the spiritual stone, were you informed about the legend of how our world came to be?" "I tried to understand it, but wasn't able to do to me, not being to grasp it through just words. I needed to see it through visuals, but at the very least I recall the names of the ones who created this world,"
I answered.
"That is a shame that you were not able to learn that way, but you are in luck, for I will be able to tell it to you through the use of magical powers that I possess. Yes, I am able to perform magic which many in the kingdom find rather surprising, given that magic is seldom seen apart from being used by fairies. My father at first was rather shocked when he discovered that I was capable of using magic when I was much younger, and even now he feels that my talent does not make sense, but he does acknowledge that I have it. Let my magic show you the history of Hyrule,"
said Twilight. She then closed her eyes and clasped her hands together and started to concentrate for a few moments before opening her eyes, revealing white lights which blinded me. I then found myself looking at a dark mass with Twilight standing next to me with her eyes now back to normal.
The legend of Hyrule begins like this. Upon their descent into the chaos that would become Hyrule, each of the three golden goddesses would contribute to the creation of our world. Now, behold,"
said Twilight. She beckoned me to watch the descent of the goddesses, and I was shocked and surprised at the same time when I saw who they were. The three goddesses of Hyrule were Princess Celestia, Princess Luna, and their young niece, Princess Cadance, which made sense given that they were all alicorns back in Equestria. Even though I never met Luna and Cadance before, Princess Celestia often told me about them.
"We have arrived here, my sisters,"
said Princess Celestia.
"I can understand why you would want to do this, Din, but would it be a wise decision for us to make? What if the world we create does not follow the path that we had intended for it? What if it becomes corrupted? We could be making a mistake if we were to go ahead with this,"
said Princess Luna.
"As always, your words of wisdom speak truly, Nehru. I believe that we can create an ideal world where the creatures will be able to coexist with one another. We have seen the creation of other such worlds at the hands of our fellow gods and goddesses, yet they chose to guide their creations rather than allow them to figure things out on their own. My vision of a world would be one where we three would not interfere unless it was absolutely necessary, and that the creatures would thrive on their own. If it were to be corrupted, then there would be those who would strive to destroy the corruption, thus returning it back to the peaceful ways of before,"
said Princess Celestia.
"If such corruption were to happen, then such a world should be destroyed before it could spiral out of control,"
said Princess Luna.
"To do such a thing as that, Nehru, would mean resorting to actions that would label us as murderers in the eyes of our fellow gods and goddess,"
said Princess Celestia.
"Then that makes you naive, yet you always were like that, which makes me glad that you are my sister, Din. The creatures that shall inhabit this world must strive on their own to become more than what we envision them to be, and if they can achieve this, there is no telling what they will be able to accomplish. Of course, we must also take into account of the demons that exist below the heavens in the underworld, sister, for they will no doubt try to sabotage our work when we have finished. Their leader is one who does not pose an immediate threat, but that could change in the future if it were to gain power.
said Princess Luna.
What do you suggest?
Asked Princess Celestia.
A means with which our world can protect itself,
replied Princess Luna.
That would require much force in order to make it possible, Nehru, and that would involve us having to give up a small portion of our power to keep the demons of the underworld from doing as they please,
said Princess Cadence.
A sacrifice of that nature sounds within reason, does it not, Far-Ro-Ray?
Asked Princess Luna.
Perhaps, but we must be careful when we create this means, my sister, for if the demons do not claim it and corrupt this world, then the creatures we create will succumb to the temptation of wanting to possess our power. We have seen from our fellow gods and goddesses that the creatures they created were frail things that were easy enough to sway under evil influence despite the original good intentions that they were created to have,
replied Princess Cadence.
Both you and Nehru have provided grand insight to this matter, Far-Ro-Ray, and it is something that shall be taken into consideration. Once we are finished creating this new world, we shall create the means with which this world shall protect itself from the demons. If the creatures become tempted to wield such a power, then we shall have a measure in place ready to act upon our command, and carried out by our will,
said Princess Celestia.
The three goddesses then set to work on creating a world which would revolve around the three forces that each of them represented: power, wisdom, and courage. Din used her flaming arms and created the red earth. Nehru poured the wisdom from her soul into the red earth and created the spirit of law, which would serve as a basis for how the world was to be governed. Far-Ro-Ray with all of her heart created those which would uphold the law, the creatures that served as our ancient ancestors. Once their labors were complete, the three golden goddesses returned to the heavens. At the exact point in which they departed, three golden triangles descended with each piece containing the essence of one of the goddesses. This divine relic was known as the Triforce, and would serve as the basis of our world's providence for centuries to come,
said Twilight.
Creating something with that kind of power must have really been tempting for the people, right?
I asked.
You are correct, Sunset Shimmer, which leads me to the next part of the legend. When the Triforce descended, it remained in a place where all could access it if they so wished. It was soon discovered that one's own desires could be granted if they were to lay their hands on the Triforce, and once news spread of this revelation, the corruption the goddesses feared began to grow,
replied Twilight.
I know how the goddesses felt when it came to the power of corruption,
I said.
How so?
Asked Twilight.
I'd rather not say, because you may find it hard to believe,
I replied.
Perhaps you can tell me another time when you feel ready to tell me. Ahem. When it became apparent that too many were using the Triforce for selfish purposes, the ancient sages decided to take action. The resting place of the Triforce was sealed behind a large stone slab known as the Door of Time within the Temple of Time. It has been this way ever since, and thus, the Triforce fell into the annals of history and became a legend passed down through the ages as a story,
said Twilight. She then clasped her hands together again in order to dispel the magic she had used to show me the history of the kingdom.
Couldn't the stone slab be removed somehow?
I asked.
Moving the Door of Time is impossible unless you have all of the keys necessary to open it. 3 spiritual stones were created to serve as the keys needed to open the door to the sacred realm, yet these were scattered across the kingdom. There is also a 4th key which binds the others together, and has been closely guarded by the royal family for generations. The Ocarina of Time,
replied Twilight.
If the Door of Time has been sealed for so many years, why would the great Deku tree give me the spiritual stone of the forest, and have me bring it here to you? It makes no sense,
I said.
There was another part of my dream which I have not yet told you of. Sunset Shimmer. The dark clouds that covered the land in darkness. I believe that they symbolize the man who currently speaks with my father. I have been watching the proceedings from this window as I did not wish to be in the presence of one who has an evil heart. This may sound strange coming from me, Sunset Shimmer, but could you look through this window at the man who haunts my dreams? While his black armor is one that I am unfamiliar with, I know that he hails from the Gerudo Valley which lies to the west, and that his name is
Ganondorf, said Twilight. Upon hearing that very name again, various emotions began to swirl about inside of me. If this was the same Ganondorf in the dream that I experienced, as well as the same Ganondorf who caused all of this to happen back in the real world, then I have come face to face with my true enemy. I immediately pushed Twilight out the way, causing her to fall to the ground, and I apologized straight away for my actions, as I had to see if this was him. Upon staring into the window, I found myself looking at a finely decorated room complete with guards, various attendants, and a large gold ornate throne upon sat the King of Hyrule himself. Standing a short distance and walking slowly towards the king was a tall man wearing black armor. This was Ganondorf himself, and I was finally seeing what he looked like. His build was rather muscular for someone in armor, but why did he have such a long beard, and what was with those small horns protruding from his head? As I stared closer in order to make sense of the situation, Ganondorf suddenly turned his attention towards me, his eyes glowing bright yellow as though he were trying to pierce my very soul with his gaze. Actually, it did feel like he was trying to do just that, which meant that I was in trouble once again. To be continued. Chapter 3, The Unicorn and the Pony.